My name's Guy Lakin. This is thermodynamics. Um, First of all, this is the first time I've ever taught thermodynamics, so just in the interest of full disclosure, I'm sure there are going to be some little hiccups here and there, but we'll get through it together. Um, and as far as like overall philosophy, I'm going to try as hard as I can to be very clear about what I want you to do, very clear about what things I want you to understand. I'm going to spend most of today going through the syllabus, and we'll talk about the fact that there's no required textbook, but the idea is I'm going to say exactly what I want you to know. I want you to understand what I say well. It's like a trade-off. Instead of telling you to read 150 pages of a textbook over the course of the semester, I'm going to give you the amount I can say in these hours, and that's a lot less material. And so I want you to understand it well, read it and reread it. And I'm going to try to make it clear, give you sort of a system for tell you each day, like, I want you to read these notes, I want you to do these problems, and I'll have you reread notes and all that. But basically, my goal for myself is to cut down the amount of stuff that I want you to know, and my goal for you is to know that limited amount of stuff very well. That's the trade-off. And I'm going to do all my lectures on a few of you have had my classes before. It's the same way I do all my classes. I'm going to do my lectures on here. That's not something important there. But so basically, it works just like a whiteboard. You're going to read what I write up there. You're going to take notes. But the benefit is, at the end of the class, I can post a PDF of everything I've written, and I can post a video of the whole lecture where you're watching my pen move and listen to what I'm saying. So if you miss class, it's really useful. And then if there's something in a class that you didn't follow and you want a second crack at or whatever, you can go over it again. Same with example problems. And I'll try to do example problems that are very similar to the problems I ask you to do. So I want to start today by just going through the syllabus. This is sort of more important for my basic physics classes. Oh, did I? I didn't start this. Yes, I did. But you need to know how to get on D2L. Everything is going to be on D2L. I assume that's not going to be a problem for most people here. So to go through the syllabus, I'm going to go to the Normdale website, go to D2L, and just start that way. So here is the main Normandale webpage, normandale.edu, and up in the right top corner says D2L, and you can get into D2L that way. And you need to know your star ID and star ID password, and those get you into D2L. Okay, and then once you're in, I assume you see something like this. They actually just changed D2L this year, so it looks a little different than it used to, but somewhere down here for me, and I assume it's similar for you, it lists all the classes that you're taking. And so thermodynamics. And once you get into the thermodynamics class page, on the left, there's the announcements. You should get in the habit of checking this D2L page every day or two. Every day, it doesn't take very long. May as well do it every day. And anything that I change up here, including your assignment for each class period, is going to be posted in the announcements. So that's the first thing you should pay attention to. And then all of the files that you're going to need to access are in the content browser. Over here, go to content browser. And The only thing that I've posted so far is under course information, there's a syllabus. And so we're going to start by going through that. This is a 3-credit class, no lab. None of my classes have labs except my basic physics class, which means that every semester I have to teach like 1 million classes because others are low credits. But anyways, so this is all there is to this class. My name's Guy Lakin. My office is S2302, so if you go to those stairs right at the end of the hall, it's right up on the 2nd floor, right at the top of the stairs. Actually, for office hours, I'm going to do my office hours somewhere else. So you don't need to go to my office that often, but maybe there'll be times that you want to schedule an appointment or something. The class time right now, good job. The room is here. Office hours. All of my office hours I do in sort of like a study hall format. I have them in places where a bunch of people can, with a bunch of people at once, and people can work together on problems, ask me questions if you get stuck. So to come to office hours, don't think of it as something you go to just when you get stuck. I think I would recommend that you think of it as a place you can go where hopefully other people in the class are going to be, and you can work on stuff. And if you do get stuck, I'm there to answer questions, and other people will be there. So Mondays and Wednesdays, sort of late afternoon, my office hours are going to be in the physics lab, the Physics 1 lab, just right next door. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, from 11 to 12, I'm going to have an office hour each day in the tutoring center. So there's plenty of seating in both of those places. Just come in, sit down, start working on stuff, and then I'll be there to answer questions. Yeah, I would say, I would recommend, look at your schedule, see if there's a time you can make it almost every week, and just try to get in the habit of showing up every week, The people who do that seem to benefit a lot from it. So one other thing that, besides the fact that I'm there to answer questions, the classes I teach, I don't really incorporate a lot of group work into them. No, not really any explicit group work. I guess sometimes working on the board and stuff. But, getting in the habit of working on technical problems with other people is a great skill to have. It'll pay off when you get to a university where it'll be harder to get access to the professors, and you can't always count on the professors making an effort to make the transition easy from the lecture to the problems. I don't know what it's. I've only been at the U, but often it can be an intimidating place in the classes at the U. They don't really try to make it feel that user friendly, and having the ability to work with other students can really help you get through in an environment like that. Not trying to make the U sound really scary. It's great, but yeah, I think overall people at the U would tell you that group work is more important than people here would tell you. So it's a good skill to get. Prerequisites are Physics 1 and Chem 1061. Any questions about contact information, prerequisites, anything like that? Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. Contacting me. You can leave a phone message, but email is probably the best way. So, and sometimes it happens that you'll write an email and I won't write back to you. And what has happened in that case is I've seen your message and then decided that I was going to respond to it later. And then in the meantime, enough messages have come in that your message went down below the bottom of my email screen, and then it's gone. So no offense. That's just how it works. So if that happens, what? I don't know. I'm not really like technical, So if that happens, please write a second email, lightly mentioning that I didn't write back to your first email, and then I'll be embarrassed and I'll write back right away. Okay. Before I get into this next stuff, let me show you what it looks like. So the materials that'll be available to you, the lecture notes and the videos, let me just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to have to go to a different class because I've never taught this before, so I don't have old notes. So let's go to college physics. And so old lecture notes for college physics. And I'll just go to some random day, September 12th of last year. Okay, so this is all the stuff that I wrote as I was going through the lecture. And it just shows up in a file like this. So if you ever miss class, you could actually just print out the PDF of the notes from that class and then just take more limited notes in the margins to clarify stuff to yourself while you watch the lecture video. So you'll have access to all the notes, everything that I write in the whole class. And here's what the videos look like. It's going to look like, when I go into YouTube, it's going to look like I really like Five Nights at Freddy's. Those are my kids. I just want to assure you. Like it's grizzly bear attack. No, don't worry. I'm a normal person. Those are my kids. Okay, so let's type in dynamics. Laken dynamics. Okay, and so there's a playlist on here that gives all the videos for the whole semester. I'll go to some random one.
And the centroid is...
Is that coming through the ceiling?
Here.
I'm not saying anything yet.
Then this distance is...
Okay, so
3.
I can't guarantee that it's that exciting, but anyways, so you see the cursor moving, writing stuff while you hear what I'm saying. It's just like watching the board while I'm lecturing.
Mass times the acceleration of the center of mass of the ith body.
Okay. That's the idea.
And that also works for centroids.
Okay. the materials that are needed for the class, this is, I'm going to do something a little different than I have in the past. Well, the most important thing to notice about materials needed, or the most unusual thing, is that you don't need to get a textbook. The textbook that I'm basing my lectures on is Moran and Shapiro, Fundamentals of Engineering Thermodynamics. I think the current edition is the 6th edition, but I would say, and really, I think you should get, for future reference, a thermodynamics reference book. But there's no reason you have to get the most recent edition. I would recommend, look on Amazon or eBay, find a cheap, used, old copy. You can probably save a lot of money, all of the problems and stuff, I'll give you files with those problems on them. So the things that you do need, you need a good technical calculator, a graphing calculator. The TI calculators are the ones I'm most used to. I know some other companies make good ones. I would recommend, if you're in the market for a new calculator, that you get one that does eigenvalues and eigenvectors. You probably haven't done too much with those, or maybe nothing with those yet, but very shortly those are going to start coming up in every single class you take, and it'll be nice to have a way to, compute them in your calculator. So this one says, my example of a calculator that does eigenvalues and eigenvectors is the TI-89. That's a little bit of like an outdated reference. The TI-89 is great. That's the one that I still use, but the Inspire also does it, and that's the one more people seem to get now. Another thing that you'll be happy if your calculator can do, I think calculators that do this stuff probably all have programming ability, but it's pretty nice to be able to enter some programs into your calculator too as you go forward. And now here's the other thing, and this is your homework for this class period, is to go get a 3-ring binder with dividers. Separate the binder up into a section for course notes, a section for the assignments and the solutions, and then a section for the exams. Okay, so and as far as like checking your homework, I'm just going to do it as looking over your binders 2 times during the semester. Okay, so you're going to submit these binders. They're going to have all the problems in that I've assigned. But the basic idea is I'm trying to help you create this physical thing that's going to be a nice, convenient reference for this class later looking back. You can hang on to it, and then if you can't remember how to do something, it'll be easy to find the assignments, easy to find the course notes, that kind of stuff. Okay, yep. You'll keep them, yeah, and I'll just take them for like a week in the middle, and I'll take them for towards the end, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, not the little one. This is a good size. I think that's a good size. I don't know what that is, 2 inches. And so you're probably going to need a hole punch. You are going to need access to a hole punch. You can buy it or just find one you can use. They sell them, by the way, at the bookstore. Not where you buy the textbooks downstairs, but the one where there's like snacks in the front area and stuff. Any questions about getting the binders? Okay. The topics that we're going to cover, I sort of condensed them into just 6 main topics. Energy and the first law of thermodynamics. I'm not going into those. We'll talk about what those are when we get to them. Okay, the grading scale for this class. This is the grading scale I use for all my engineering classes. Sometimes, every once in a while, I have to curve the class because, maybe an exam or two was harder than I meant it to be and the scores are a little low. This wouldn't be the grading scale if, say, only one or two people in the class got A's or something like that. But most likely, this is going to be the grading scale: 94, 84, 74, 64. And I've just it looks high, but I've kind of arrived on that by trial and error. Like I said, I try to make it pretty clear what I expect you to study. I try to make it pretty clear what kind of problems you're going to have to do on tests. And so people tend to score pretty high. And this ends up being, it doesn't end up being a especially difficult grading scale, I don't think. Yeah. And then it's not. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the total grade for the class is broken down into 70% exams, 20% quizzes, and then 10% are those binder evaluations. And so the next thing I'm going to do is just go through these subcategories. Any other questions about the overall grade before I go into the individual pieces? Okay, so there are going to be 5 exams. None of those, including the final, are going to be worth any more than any other ones. So that just means all 5 exams are worth 14% of your grade. And all of the exams are going to be cumulative up to that point. So you're going to have to keep going back and refreshing your memory on the old problems, the old lectures. I'm going to assign problems and reading of your old notes in a way to try to make sure that you keep refreshing stuff, keep going back to old sets of problems and having you do stuff that you've already done, So I'll try to help you with that, but it's sort of your responsibility too to make sure that you keep refreshed on the old ideas. Exam 5 is the one during our scheduled final period. And if your score for exam 5 is higher than your score for any of the first 4 exams, your exam 5 score, it counts as itself, it counts as exam 5, and it also replaces the lowest of your first 4. So like if you really bomb one of your exams, you get a good final score, then you get the 94, say you get a 94 on the final, then you get the 94 for the final, and you get the 94 for exam 2 that you did badly on before. So this works as a way to, like, if you, it gives you a little wiggle room if things just don't go right for one of those exams, or especially like a lot of times exam 1, people don't really know what to expect, and they come in and don't do that well on that, then the scores improve. That's the kind of thing that this can help with. This also, though, is my only policy for makeup exams. Well, if you have a good predetermined reason for missing an exam, we can talk about it. But for the most part, I'm not planning to give any makeup exams during the semester. So if you miss exam 2, then for the time being, you get a 0 on exam 2. Then you get a 94 on exam 5 at the end of the class. And then after the whole class is over, you get the 94 for exam 5. And that 94 also replaces the 0. Okay. So it's a makeup policy if you miss an exam. And if you don't miss any exams, it gives you a little wiggle room. Okay. So it's supposed to be a gentle incentive not to miss any exams. And the dates of all these tests are given here. Basically, like every 3 weeks is a test. I'll put it on the announcements. It is available, but I don't remember it. Oh, one thing also that I should say is you can see that the total grade is 90% based on things that you could think of as different forms of tests, 70% based on really exam type tests, you know. And that seems like a lot, and I know that makes some people nervous, but I do two things in an effort to make it fair, grading basically the whole class on tests of some kind. The first one is I make every effort to not make you feel like you're racing against the clock while you're taking these tests. We're going to have 80 minutes or say 85 minutes, you know, if we go halfway through the passing period. So 85 minutes to take the test. I always write these tests with, like, what I'm trying to do when I write the test is I'm trying to write a test where half of the class will have handed in their test and left within 1 hour. Okay, so I'm trying to write a 1 hour test, and you have 25 minutes more than that to take it. So I think, except in some cases where I sort of mess that up, you know, for the most part, you'll feel like you have plenty of time. Okay, you won't, if your mind wanders or whatever, you look at it and your mind blanks for a second, you have time. You know? And the second thing I do to make it feel fair to people who would rather have their evaluation based on handing in assignments than on tests is the problems on the test are going to be very similar in format to problems that you've done on the assignments. So if you've done the homework, and besides that, you make sure that your understanding of the homework problems is good enough that you could be sitting with someone who didn't know how to do it and explain step by step why you're doing what you're doing to solve it, then you're going to do great on the test. Just twice a semester, exactly. And you'll put it in your binder. Yeah, but that is true. But I think you'll be much happier if you don't think of it that way. But yes, that's exactly right. So yep, right. I'm going to give you full solutions to about 3/4 of the problems. Only 1/4 of the problems you won't have access to the solutions. The other ones you can do it and then look at what I did and compare. And also beyond that, you're always welcome to bring your problems, you know, after you do them, bring your work into office hours, and I can go through it with you and say, like, okay, here you're doing it just right, here you're missing something important, that kind of thing. But I think the biggest help for that is going to be the posted solutions. But which also means that when you do so you could also wait until the day before the binders are turned in, and 75% of the problems you could just copy off the solutions. But just remember that the whole idea of these problems is trying to get you to the point where you can do these kind of problems on the test. So yeah, you could get away with that for the binder evaluation, but it would not be a good policy overall. Any other questions about the test? Yep. Yes. That's a good question. Not as much as statics. Statics is that way more than any other class in the entire world. So, but somewhat. Yeah, you know, it is going to sort of build on itself a little bit, but this has a little bit more of like a branching thing. Any other questions about tests? A review? You know, I'm not planning to. I'd be happy to answer questions about, like when we get closer to exams. To me, I think of like the review is the problems, the practice problems that I assign, and and I guess the notes. But I'm trying to cut down the amount of information that I want you to know, and so I feel good about expecting you to know everything that I say and assign. That's sort of the idea. Yep. No, not really. I just kind of spaced out. I divided up the semester into equal chunks, put the exams there, and then whatever material we've covered up until then, that's what's going to be on the test. Yeah. Any other questions about the test? Okay. Yes. The tests are entirely just doing problems. The quizzes are a little more like what you're talking about, and I'll get to those in a second. Okay, so now the binders. I don't really care about the format or whatever. I just want them to be neat. I want your notes to be easy to follow. I want your homework to be to look as nice as your homework would be if you were turning it in. I want everything to be legible and easy to follow. Okay. So this binder will contain all the notes, the assignments, and the solutions, and the exams for the whole semester. I'm going to check it twice. There should be, clear dividers for the different sections. And so here's what I expect for each of those 3 sections in the binder. In the class notes section, you should have good, thorough class notes for every class meeting. If you miss a class, or even if you don't miss a class and you just like this better, just print out the PDFs from my class and that'll work fine. Okay. If I just want, because all I want is for there to be nice, clear notes about everything that I cover in the class available to you in this binder for when you go back and you try to look up some topic. Okay. So yeah, that's what it says here. If you miss a class, just print it out on D2L, punch it, and put it in there in the right spot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. The assignments and solutions. I'm going to assign problems for every class meeting. So you're going to solve all these problems and put the solutions in the binder along with the original problem. So in that section should be the printout of the assigned problems, and then behind that, your solution. And if I guess I don't say it, but I think I would also recommend, since I didn't put it in here, I'm not going to hold you to it, but for future reference, I would recommend that you also print out my posted solutions to most of those and put those in there too. It's just more stuff that you have available for when you look back at these problems later. Okay. I'm not collecting your homework assignments, but like I mentioned a minute ago, what I expect for the appearance of your work, because it's an important thing to practice for engineering classes, is I expect you the solutions that are in your binder to look nice and neat, legible, easy to read. Okay, so if you go through, and I mean, I always do this, like I'll go through the first time trying to do a problem, there'll be things scribbled out and arrows going up to here or whatever. But if that's what it looks like your first time going through, then you need to rewrite them before you put them in. Okay. And I think that's good for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it gets you into the practice of um, doing professional looking work, which is surprisingly important, because you're going to have to communicate these ideas with other people. And it also just helps ingrain the steps in your head to go through it a second time. And then the last thing, the exams. So there's going to be these 5 exams. You get it back, 3-hole punch it, put it in the section. And so that's just totally for future reference. Although I suppose, during the semester, it could be useful to go know exactly where your exam 1 is when you're going to study for exam 2 or 3 or whatever. Okay, any questions about the binders? Yeah, they're on here. Yes. So these are, and now that I think about it, so I have 2 dates given. One is right after exam 2. The second one is the last day of class. We probably want to move that. I think I'm going to choose a new date for that so that I can get your binders back to you by the last day of class, and then you have all that stuff with you to study. So I'll change that on here, and I'll put that in the announcements when I change it. Let's see, when is exam 4? So maybe what I'll do is I'll think about it, but I'll probably do something like have you turn your binder in the second time right after exam 4. I'll get it back to you within a week, and then you can study from it after that. And then so you'll submit them 2 times. Each one of those will be worth 5% of your grade. I would prefer, and I'm sure you would prefer to, if I could collect your assignments as you do them and grade them in a timely manner and turn them back to you with good comments on them and whatever. But it's just never worked that way when I've tried to do it. It takes a long time to get them back. All I end up doing is writing a number on them or something. It doesn't really give you any helpful feedback, and it just seems to be a workload that I can't handle. It would also be nice to have TAs or whatever. But anyways, you got to make do with what you have. You know what I mean? So this is the way I'm going to try it. But like I said, reiterate, anybody who would like individual feedback on the problems, I totally encourage you to come into my office hours or make a out of office hours appointment with me and come in with your solutions, and we can go through a bunch of those problems just step by step, and I can tell you what I like, what I don't like, why I think you'd be better off going in this other direction here. Every semester I mention that as an option to people, and not too many people usually take me up on it, but the people who do, it seems to improve their scores quite a bit. Usually people do it after they are disappointed with like their exam 1 score or something, and I say, come in and do this. And when we do it, it seems to really help them get on my wavelength about what I'm looking for in these problem solutions, So keep that in mind. And then the last part of the grade are the quizzes. So every other Thursday, except one, as you can see, it says no quiz there. In the last 15 minutes of class, we're going to have a quiz, and this quiz is going to ask for you to, it's going to be short answer. Mostly it's going to be short answer about things that I've said in class. Like, give me the statement of the first law of thermodynamics, or what are the conditions for, what are the requirements for a system if you're going to use this equation? Things that I've said in class that I consider to be important, really key ideas in the class, And so in order to get ready for that part of the quizzes, you just need to read and reread your notes. The people who took statics with me are like, yeah, sure, we're going to have quizzes every 2 weeks. No, but this is for real this time. So last time I got all bogged down. No, this is it. 2. Yeah, that was not good. This time, those are the quizzes. No. In fact, here's how serious I am. I ripped the syllabus in half and posted it on my bulletin board so those dates are looking right at me while I sit in my desk. Yeah, it's exactly. Yes, I will. So I'm glad we're getting this out now. So the people who took statics are skeptical about this, but I'm telling you, we're going to have 6 quizzes on those dates. And so 20% of your grade is quizzes. So each quiz is worth 3% of your grade. So 1 isn't too big a deal, but they add up to a lot. And I will also, I'm going to drop the lowest. So there's no makeup on quizzes, but I dropped the lowest one. You can miss 1 and it doesn't affect anything. If you miss 2, you only lose, it affects your grade, but not that much, but they add up.
So even if you know you're going to be down on those,
come talk to me. All this stuff sounds very like black and white, but I'll talk to you about it. But that's the basic idea. No makeup quizzes. Any other questions about the quizzes? Also, the quizzes are cumulative. So, like I said, I'm going to give assignments that do force you to go back and look at stuff. But if that's not enough going back for you personally to remember how to do those old problems, what I said in those old lectures, then it's your job to go back and read the old notes more and look over the old problems more. Okay. Oh, and there's one other thing. Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna focus on the big ideas, and so it's not. I'm not gonna ask real nitpicky things. I'm gonna ask things that I've tried to emphasize in class. A lot of times in class, I'll say, put a star and write notice, like this is something important. And those are the kind of things that I tend to focus on. I'm going to want you to remember important equations. Important equations, I'm going to want you to remember under what conditions those equations apply. So those are the kind of things I'll ask, not like, I can't even, not just some stupid offhand comment or whatever. And the other, so I forgot to mention the other part of the quizzes. In every quiz, there will be, in most of the quizzes, there will be 1 or 2 questions where I actually just ask you to recreate one of the homework questions or one of the parts of one of the homework questions. So it'll be an assignment that you've already done, and you're just going to have to redo that calculation. So like I said, I just want, through the whole semester, I want you to be building this memory of how to do these certain problems that I've assigned, the important stuff that I've said, and that's what I'm going to keep testing you on. Like, to me, the way you should think about it is like, God, I hope on quiz 5 he asks something about the first week of class, because that first week of the class is like the only week that you've been studying the whole semester up till that point. Any other questions about the quizzes? Okay. And my policy on cheating is don't do it. I don't know what other teachers here have said, but that's how I feel about it. But so what does that? I mean, technically, what I would say that means, I don't really have problems with that too much in engineering classes. Sometimes I have problems with college physics with that. So it means don't look at the, copy someone's test. Obviously, that's cheating. There's a little bit more of a fuzzy area when it comes to working on assignments. And so I would describe cutoff between working together on homework and copying someone's homework this way. I encourage you to work together as much as you want, or even more than you want, to gain an understanding of how to do a problem. But understanding how to do a problem means that when you write the solution that you're turning into me, it has all been held in your brain enough that without looking at notes or whatever, you can sit there and work through the problem. You know what I mean? If you're working with someone else and you're like, oh, how do you do this? And you look and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And you write something and then you're like, oh, wait, oh, okay, now, that's sort of convincing yourself that they're helping you understand it, but you really never had it all here, And, really the problem with that comes when you have to do something similar to that on a test later. You just never really understood how to do it. Okay. Any questions about anything with the class structure? Yeah. Will you be dedicating any time for questions on it? Oh, yes, always. I shouldn't say, I like the 80-minute class format. I always like, with 50 minutes, it's such a small amount of time. I always feel like we kind of have to just jump right into things. But yeah, I would say virtually every class period, I'll answer questions at the start of it. And including going through, if there are practice problems that you got stuck on or whatever, I'd be happy to go over problems or parts of problems too. Going back to just sort of the way I think about this stuff, like I would, to me, it's a good trade-off. Like I would prefer to have students feel like they covered less information and know that stuff really well than feel like they covered a lot of information and know it all a little bit, I think it's important to have some real things that you know how to do right, that you can sort of hang your hat on, derive other stuff from. That's important to me. And as far as I didn't mention this when I was going through the grading scale, I know it's kind of a common thing in engineering class culture that I mean, it really sort of feels just like the process of beating you down and building you up. It's like you get classes where after the course is over, the A's go down to 54% and the B's go down to 46% or whatever, and the tests are just brutal stuff you've never thought about before. I mean, I guess I can understand there are some benefits to that, and I guess I can sort of understand what some of the benefits are, but to me, like, especially in engineering, that's not the way to go. Like, if you're doing engineering work, professionally or for research or whatever, you need to know that the approach you're using is correct, and you need to, if there's something you don't know how to do, you need to be very clear with yourself that that's the case. If after you graduate and you're working for some company, see how happy your boss is if you get 54% of your stuff right. You know what I mean? So So that's the way I think of it. Like, I want to limit the amount of information that we deal with as much as I have to for you to feel like, yes, I know this material. You know, that's how I think about it. Yes.
With that being said, book that you're basing your outline on, are there any sections that you kind of gloss over outside of this class?
I'm going to try to cover all the, like if you look at what's expected to be covered in a thermodynamics class, like look at the Common Course outline at the U of Minnesota or other universities. I'm gonna cover all of those things. As far as the depth, that's a good question. Actually, that's probably something I should try to look around and see. Maybe I can answer that question for you better later, but that's a good question. Going back to the like knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know thing. I spent a lot of time in school, but after college I did a master's degree, and then I worked for 3 years at a hospital, and my job was working in a biomechanics lab, making sure the equipment was working, coming up with like new approaches for measuring things or whatever, and I was the only engineer working in that lab, you know. So there was no one to catch any mistakes I made. We were making clinical decisions about patients based on calculations I was doing and stuff. When I started, it was a real stressful feeling, and you'll see as we go into this class that more than just about anyone else, like I'm very prone to, you know, making subtraction mistakes, whatever, blah blah. So it's like, okay, but it really forced me to always come up with ways to like multiple ways to check the things I was doing. I would write computer programs to simulate things that then I could use like blah blah blah. I was just always thinking about like how can I know that what I have here is right, you know? And it was a super useful experience for me, and it's sort of the way I think that's sort of something that as an engineer you want to work towards that point where you're just like, this is right, you know, this I need to figure out how to make it right, whether it's right, you know, because I'm not sure. So okay, so that's it for the syllabus. So first thing I would like to do is does everyone have a way to tear out a sheet of paper without messing up the notes you've already taken? Take 30 seconds or whatever and write this down and send it up to me. You don't have to put your name on it. I don't care about your name. I just want to see where people are at with this, and I want you to think about it for a second. So write down first, what do you think of as like a definition of thermodynamics? What is thermodynamics? And second, what are some sort of technical applications of thermodynamics? Like, what are some places in the world where you think thermodynamics will be important? Okay, like somebody who wants to work on this thing needs to be good at thermodynamics. Like, where in technology is thermodynamics useful? This isn't like a trick question where I'm hoping that you're going to say everywhere, and you know, don't say that. I just want I just wanted you to spend a minute or whatever, thinking about where thermodynamics fits into engineering practice. Okay. Here are my answers. So what is thermodynamics? Thermodynamics studies the conversion. Oh, thanks. Between thermal and mechanical energy. So, in other words, you're using thermodynamics if you are applying mechanical energy to a system to change the temperature, or if you're using temperature changes in order to produce mechanical energy. Okay, that's there could be some parts of thermodynamics that definition is leaving out, but that certainly is 95% or more of it. And where do you see this in technology? Well, the things that we're primarily going to study are the power cycle. That is where you use a temperature change to do work. So this includes all kinds of engines. Actually, maybe I think that might be a definition of engines, so I'll just leave it at that. But that includes steam engines. Steam engine is sort of a pure power cycle. It's very similar to combustion engines, although then you're also using chemical potential energy. The second type of thing that you use where thermodynamics is used is in a heat pump. And the idea of a heat pump is you do work on a system with the goal of raising the temperature of a hot region. And I don't know. I think these are normally just called heat pumps. And then the third thing is a refrigeration cycle. And that is where you work on a system to reduce the temperature of a cold region. So this is how you, what air conditioners use. Refrigerators and freezers. And all of these, so these three basic areas are based on two properties of gases. So imagine that you have, and this is sort of a way that we're going to think about a lot of systems in thermodynamics. Imagine that you have a cylinder with a piston inside of it, okay? And so you have a piston and a cylinder. That doesn't, well, let's just say that's insulated. So what that insulation does is if you just left this piston alone, it would stay the same temperature as long as you want. So what we're talking about here is, here's the cylinder. Here's the piston. And here's the gas that we're thinking about. So first, if there is a load on the piston that exactly balances gas pressure, then what would happen if you now like lit a fire underneath this cylinder and increased the temperature of the gas? So then if you increase the gas temperature, that causes this piston to rise. And that's the idea of an engine is, you can see how a combustion engine would work like this too. So if the piston is here, exactly, say it takes a 10-pound weight on top of this to exactly balance this. And then you heat up this gas, increase the temperature, the pressure builds inside and pushes the piston up. And so what you're doing is converting thermal energy, increased internal energy of the gas, to do work on the surroundings. And the other thing that you use is if the piston is pushed down, that gas is compressed, and then the temperature of the gas goes up. And it's, so which one of these things is the power cycle dependent on? The first one, yep. The idea of a power cycle is you're using changes in temperature to do work on the surroundings, and that's what this does. And it's sort of a funny fact that heat pumps and refrigeration cycles both depend on this second one. Both of those, the mechanism you're using is you compress a gas, and when you compress it, the temperature goes up. And then you use that in different ways in those two things. This is sort of a funny fact. I remember we have a motorhome, and the appliances in a motorhome, you have to use sort of different approaches than you do in a house. And our refrigerator in our motorhome runs on propane. So that sounds sort of funny, you know, like we have a propane tank and it's ignited and burned to keep the refrigerator cold. But the way that that works is you put these two ideas together. You burn the propane, increase the temperature of a gas in order to do work. So now you have the ability to do work. And then the work that you do is compressing a separate gas, a different gas, in order to increase the temperature of that gas, which is the mechanism for the refrigeration cycle. And so the idea of thermodynamics is this back and forth conversion of thermal energy, high or low temperature, and mechanical work. Newer, 2013. Yep.
There'll be a lot of discussion about loss.
Oh, like yes, like non-recoverable energy and that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think we'll start talking about most things in sort of an ideal way, and then we'll talk about how loss. Okay, so the these are the tools that we're going to roughly generally use for thermodynamics. So the tools available to us. The first is conservation of mass. The second is conservation of energy. The third is that no matter what thermodynamic process you go through, the total entropy in the universe increases. And the fourth is that entropy is zero at absolute zero, or at 0 Kelvin. So with those four mathematical tools, we're going to group those together in different ways to solve all these problems. Now, you can think of, those are going to bring up a bunch of different equations in a bunch of different forms, but those are sort of the principles. Yes? 0 Kelvin, that's what that's supposed to be, yeah. Now, whenever you, say, use Newton's second law, the first part of that is being very clear about what the system is that you're isolating, right? And that's why when you use Newton's second law, you always draw a free body diagram, okay? You want to be very clear about what the boundaries are of what you're what you're analyzing. And that's the same in thermodynamics too. And there's two types of systems that we're going to, so these are applied to two types of systems. The first is called a closed system. And what that means is that as you're going through the analysis, the material particles that you're analyzing never change. That's like a free body diagram. Okay, like if we're analyzing this thing and now it moves over here, we're still analyzing that same set of particles even though it's moved. Okay, so the physical, let's say the material particles that you're analyzing for example, a closed system would be in this piston cylinder that I drew up above the gas in that cylinder. Okay. Now this piston can go up or down, but that gas doesn't have anywhere to go. So if we're analyzing that gas, then we're analyzing a closed system.
The universe would be another
Mhm.
for it.
Yes. So the gas in a piston cylinder. The second type is called a control volume approach. And so that's a case where you're looking at the same location and space the whole time, but material is maybe going in one side, coming out the other side. So let's say the location in space stays the same. But material moves in and out. So an example there would be if you're looking at an air pump, you'd likely use this control volume approach. There's always air coming in the inlet, and there's always, so that's material particles are coming in the inlet, and they're going out the outlet. And so at any instant, you're looking at a new set of air particles, but you're still analyzing that same volume in space. And so everything that we're going to do is going to be a combination of, these four principles with these two approaches for isolating bodies. And I think that'll be something you can sort of center yourself on as you, so what are we doing here? Okay, we're using what we're using is a conservation of mass approach with a control volume approach, and those four principles and those two choices of how to isolate the system combined to give us everything that's going to follow. Any questions about that? Okay, so your assignment for Thursday is just to get that binder ready, and then Thursday we'll get through some material where you can actually do some problems.